They all are very different. Our oldest son is probably one of the smartest people, and I could say this because, you know, it's not my genetics naturally. He's adopted. He's one of the brightest people I've ever seen. He also has learning disabilities, and he's HDD. And to make a long story short, he's now president of a wind power company in the Southwest and is doing spectacularly well. He can never sit still. I mean, he is just a serial entrepreneur. When he got out of college, he came back here and he wound up with $6 million in financing in the go-go days and had a search engine company. He sold it, unfortunately. If he was 2 years older, he would be very wealthy. He sold it, unfortunately, after things bust. But he walked out. He walked out without any debt and with an extraordinary experience. So he is. He's the dreamer and he's the entrepreneur, and he just goes from one thing to another and does it all very, very well. But he was an interesting, not a handful growing up, but he needed to be at a special school, at the lab school for a while, and he needed always to have a lot of structure that you put on him to be sure that those extraordinary entrepreneurial experiences and the way of thinking that he had was channeled in the right way. His sister, next sister is, he's 34, his next sister is 32. She went to Vanderbilt and Rollins. She was an All-American lacrosse player in high school. And when she finished school, she decided to become a paramedic and firefighter. And she is a trained paramedic and firefighter. She's married to a paramedic and firefighter who's a member of the Fairfax County International Urban Search and Rescue and was in Haiti for 16 days. They have 3 kids. They live on our street. And she is the lacrosse coach. She is the head and only lacrosse coach at Trinity University at Catholic. They hired her this fall, Pat McGuire did, when their record was 0 to 185. They have never won a game. And her first game is Saturday. A little pressure.
Okay.
Well, she figures whatever she does has to be better than what happened before. And then the third daughter, who is 18 months younger than Sarah, they were 2 years apart, then 18 months apart, then 11 months apart, and then 8 years apart. Gillian went to Duke, and they got a master's in education at UVA, and she teaches in the low-income school down the Route 1 corridor. She has 1 child and is pregnant with a second, and her husband went to UVA and then Darden and works in mergers and acquisitions, the strategic planning for General Dynamics in the chairman's office. But Gillian started when each kid is very different. And when my mom died, she left an educational trust fund, but then she left each kid $20,000 to do whatever they wanted with. Jonathan bought a car. Gillian started a special trips camp for needy and abused kids in honor of my mom called Grandma Rita's Children, which is a story in and of itself. It would take, you know, a whole tape to go through it. But bottom line, it's won a lot of awards, and she continues to do that at the same time she teaches. And so she has 5 kids that have been through college on college scholarship programs, and she still runs this summer camp program. So she is the one that was kind of the nurturing one. She was the one that always needed to have, you know, have everybody be okay and solve everybody's problems. The 4th child, who Marie knows, is Cameron, and she went to UVA and then got a law degree at GW, and then went and worked for Patton Boggs, did not like law, and is now about to go into the Bob McDonnell administration. She is the hard charger, you know, the professional who wants to, change the world business-wise, et cetera, et cetera. And then the baby was 8 years younger, and so he kind of had 6 parents rather than 2. And though my daughters all went to boarding school, so they would come home and really spend a lot of attention to him. And he is a senior at Princeton, and he is majoring in American history and is going to go to Cambridge to get an MPhil next year in history. But he was, I will always remember, he was very verbal very early on. He was kind of like an only child because everybody else was so much older, and some kids were away at school. And one Thanksgiving, everybody was at home, and he had his binky, and he had his blanket, and everybody was telling him to do something else, and he couldn't have been 2 years old. And he looked at everybody, or maybe he was 2 years old, he looked at everybody, he plopped down with his blanket and his binky, he said, "I'm not moving until you all make up your mind." And he just, but at the same time, he had all this nurturing from all these, he literally had 6 parents. So.
And do you know what he's going to do when he gets out of college? Gets back from Cambridge? What's he want to do?
I think he'll probably go to law school, but I don't know. He'd love to be a writer, but I don't
Just
think
tell
he
him
thinks
you
you
probably
can
won't
make.
like it. Seems how this seems to be a trend in your family. You're not gonna like it.
No, and my husband went. My husband went to law school as well, and is a senior partner and your competitor at the. He's one of the five most senior partners at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, and is a big influence on Andrew.
Okay, we'll have one more question and then we have to shut it down. Nancy, we're going to give it to Nancy since she's our gracious sponsor today.
What's been your biggest challenge at the Northern Virginia Technology Council, and how did you overcome it?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat that just so we get on the camera. What's been your biggest challenge at the Northern Virginia Technology Council, and how did you overcome it?
Does it have to be a personal challenge or an NVTC challenge? I think the biggest challenge for NVTC, which I hope it does pretty well, is to keep the technology community as a cohesive whole that can have an impact on the life of Northern Virginia. And that means integrating large companies and middle-sized companies with small companies. We had a conversation about that earlier. And getting everyone on the same page in the sense of viewing themselves as a force that can really make a difference. And that just takes a lot of time and a lot of work. We have an extraordinarily good public policy staff and team. We have a very engaged board. And I guess I would say that how we accomplished that was mostly through our board, and that our board are people who are all leaders in the community who gain very little out of actually being on our board. I mean, it's not, if you wanted to say, well, how can I use my time to be sure that I have the best business outcome of it, it wouldn't necessarily be a trade association that is not a national association. But they give their time because they really view it as important to the community, and they figure, rightfully so, that their companies will prosper and if they have happy employees, and you have happy employees if you worry about the quality of life in your community, and you have happy employees if you have public policy in Virginia that is business friendly and that enables you to grow. And so we just work at that every day, and I think it's really keeping the community together. We have a huge number of programs and activities, events, both all council events and committee level events, all of which is designed to try to enhance the sense of community. Now we have 1,000-member companies, and so we can be a real force.
Bobby, I can't thank you enough. I was so excited. It was just incredible.